Okay, in order to open the case for the government bench, we call upon the Prime Minister from IIUM.
2012 might not necessarily be a myth if we don't act now. In Bola Island, more than 50,000 innocent individuals have been displaced and be considered to be environmental refugees. Whole islands like Khatib Atoll is now underwater because governments are not acting rapid enough. Ladies and gentlemen, we understand that there are minute changes and discussions happening in South Africa recently within the Copenhagen Treaty and also the Kyoto Protocol, but all of these are mere facade and has not really massive change. We say, ladies and gentlemen, the harms of the environment is something which you can't predict at that moment, and is something which is irreversible, massively disastrous. We say an act of exaggeration is justified when it is for utilitarian purposes. Our stance from opening government is simple. We say any exaggeration to perpetuate human development and human representation in the long run is justified. So let's look at the model which we stand for, although we think this might be a value judgment debate. We say the state should support this, ladies and gentlemen, by providing continuous funding and in some extent also to hide these kind of facts. At the same time, assist them in any kind of measures which is possible. Mr. Speaker, what type of exaggerations are we talking about? We say providing graphical images, pictures, videos, so what might happen 1 year down the street, despite the fact that that effects might only take place 20 years to come. Give them statistics and continuously inform public about this. But we need to realize the realm of this debate is where it is extremely difficult for opposition and the corporate sector to call this bluff. So we need to debate around that paradigm, ladies and gentlemen. The burden of proof on this side is clear. We say, ladies and gentlemen, only through our policy can we jumpstart environmental change, environmental development for the long run. 3 arguments. My first argument, why is it a dire need for exaggeration? Ladies and gentlemen, let's just discuss the harms of environmental change, right? Shortly. People's lives are lost, money are spent, billions of dollars, ladies and gentlemen, for to recover the losses. Environmental refugees, which hurts everyone. People feel insecure because they think that maybe the next day they might be hit by a tsunami. Sit down. So why is it necessary for us to exaggerate this? For 2 reasons. The first reason, ladies and gentlemen, is because we need to combat corporate influence and monopoly on environmental issues. What does this mean? We say huge corporate sectors are using the largest of funds which they have, ladies and gentlemen, to counter all the facts which environmental scientists are putting on. The reason here, ladies and gentlemen, is that there is no fair platform here because they have billions of dollars coming from Shell and ExxonMobil to hide the effects of environmental change, especially when they have a control over the media in some extent, ladies and gentlemen. So they condition and shape the mindset of society. Despite the fact that it is equal, despite the fact scientists really want to push for change, they can't do that, ladies and gentlemen, because of the effects and backlash of the monopoly which the corporate sector provide. Sit down. But the second reason why exaggeration is justified is because we need to combat facts that are intuitive towards the human race, people like you and me. Because there is a hierarchy of needs, ladies and gentlemen. Despite the fact that environment is something which is important, human race just cares a lot about economic needs, ladies and gentlemen. So money, maybe in some instance, even sex to an extent that they prioritize these facts more in contrast towards the environment. Even though environment is equally as important as other factors, ladies and gentlemen, they don't view this something as important because it's not in front of them. They can't feel it, they can't touch it, ladies and gentlemen, in contrast to the money which they gain in the short run. So we say by exaggerating this, ladies and gentlemen, now we make it a primary interest of human race to prioritize. Before I move on to the second argument, opening.
Could it be possible that it is better to help hunger or unemployment or wars instead of what you're saying, and that is a valid way to invest the funds?
That's not mutually exclusive, right? If you want to help poor people, you want to help people in famine, fine. But at the end of the day, we say exaggeration is still justified. Second argument is the principle. Why is it the responsibility of environmental scientists specifically to do this? We understand and we agree that it is the responsibility of everyone to to preserve the environment. But we say the level of responsibility towards environmental scientists is higher. Why? Because it is the mandate of their job, ladies and gentlemen, to make sure that each and every single individual in this room is aware of the effects of environmental change, ladies and gentlemen. So if they fail to do so, that means that they have broken the mandate for doing this. The example and the parallel can be drawn towards a doctor and patient relationship, ladies and gentlemen. That's why in most Western liberal democracy, doctors are allowed to inform the police when a case of domestic violence take place, and even employ placebo effects policies in some instances, ladies and gentlemen. Sit down. So finally, this is the most important argument. The third argument. Why will our policy work, and what are the effects of this? The first reason why policy will work is because that's where environmental scientists can monopolize the trust which they have. Because individuals like you and me, it's much more intuitive for us to trust the scientists because they have authority. We believe that they have been working in these sectors for 20 or 30 years of their lives. Sit down. We don't trust politicians that much because they don't specialize on this. That's why when generals are brought towards the Senate before America invaded Iraq and Afghanistan, that's when people trust them more in contrast to politicians using their word. But the second reason why it will work, ladies and gentlemen, because that's when politicians, and that's where we can pressure governments to employ better environmental standards and policy. Because that's where we change the mindset of voters on the ground. That's where, because we are employing fear, ladies and gentlemen, that's when voters will vote for better environmental policies in the long run. But the third reason why it will work, because we are activating the emotions and fear of individuals on the ground. That's when I see a picture that maybe 1 year to come or 5 years to come, I can't have a family. My family will suffer, die, ladies and gentlemen. So in that particular context, that's where it will work, because it just simply will work. So what's the outcome of this? The outcome here is that's where governments will be much more active when it comes to environmental talks, like going towards Copenhagen treaties, by being more serious because the people is pressuring them to do so. But more importantly, that's where government will employ greater environmental standards, cracking down on people who are not following these standards, employing green technologies in the long run. Ladies and gentlemen, more importantly, that's where people will be more environmentally friendly. Ladies and gentlemen, we agree that in some instances, lying and exaggeration is not a good thing. But when it comes to an environment, there's a specific and intrinsic nature. Is that once the harm has been done, it is something which is irreversible, and that harm cannot be seen at that time. We say we need to create a policy of equilibrium. Only then can we bring change. Ladies and gentlemen, I'm very happy. Okay.